Right guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. In this one I'm just going to be showing you how to install your Microshift Centos 2x10 front derailleur to your bike. So let's go ahead, let's take a look. So here we have the front mech. You can see Microshift Centos. So you've got your mounting bolt onto your hanger there, 5mm Allen key. You've got the cable pinch bolts, 4mm, and the cable goes over the top. There's a little slot. There's a little slot there that the cable runs in. Then you've got, you'll see your low screw there, and your high screw next to it. So that's the main bits you need to know about. So let's go ahead, let's get this mounted onto the bike. So first thing you need to do is just remove your mounting bolt out of there. See, so we can attach it to the hanger. Best thing to do with this is put a bit of anti-seize on the thread of here before you put the derailleur on. Just stop it seizing up or anything at a later date. And if we just mount that on there like that, we just put it on loosely so as we can still move it. So we need to just adjust the height here to the outer teeth on the outer chainring. So you set that height between there and the outer plate. What you can do is get yourself a 3mm hex head and just rest it on one of the teeth like that. So just come in straight like that, rest it on there, and then then you can lower down the derailleur so the plate's resting on it like that. And then when it's resting there, you just hold it so it can't move. There, just pinch it like that, and then make sure that this outer plate here is in line parallel with that. So when you're looking at it, it looks as though it's parallel all the way along with this outer chainring. So it's not in at the back, or it's not this way exaggerated, or it's not that way pointing towards the tyre. It's in line there with that plate. And if you just keep hold of it like that, so it keeps it straight, then just pinch it up and have a look, make sure it's okay. If it's not okay, then you can obviously just slacken it slightly and move it in or out if it needs to be moved. So that looks good where it is. Just nip that up so you can torque this up. That's 6-7 Newton meters to be adequate on that to hold it. If you want to torque that down, get your torque wrench, torque it up. So we got it in the right place now, so you can just double check your gap there like that, make sure it's right. So you don't want a massive gap, you don't want it too small, so 3mm is adequate for that. So that's that bit done. So what you need to do now is just check the low and the high adjustment screws. Primarily we do the low screw at the minute, just to make sure that's in the right place, which is the inner screw there closest to the frame. If that needs adjusting, so I'll just show you that. So what we've done is we've just rested the chain on there now. All we've got to do is resting on the inner chain ring, and we've got the chain resting on the largest sprocket on the rear cassette. So yours might be a 30, a 34, whatever you've got on the rear. So the largest one, this happens to be a 32, so we just got it resting on there. That's all it's doing, is resting there. So all we do is pull that chain tight like that, just holding on the sprocket at the front and the cassette like that. And then when we're holding it tight, we're just looking down here to make sure there's a little gap there between the chain and that plate, the inner plate there. So if we get on the low screw like that and adjust it, So turning that anti-clockwise, it's moving that plate over slightly towards the tyre, and if you turn it clockwise it moves it back. It moves the whole thing over this way towards the chainring. So what we want to do is just move that over anti-clockwise there, just to make sure there's enough room for it to be not interfering with the chain. So hold the tension on the chain like that, and it just literally passes there without touching it. It's going to be a tiny gap in here like that, but you don't want it over this way because it'd be obviously bending the chain over like that. So you need it out of the way enough so it's a clean gap like that, so you know that's okay there. And then if I just literally take that chain back off out the way for a moment, like I say, it's only resting there. Then if you just get hold of the derailleur like that, and you can just move it with your hand. So if you move it over like that, you want it so as obviously there's going to be enough room, so when you move it over it's more or less in the middle of the outer chainring there. Maybe you want it over this way enough so as the inner plate is closer to the teeth on the outer chainring, so you got more gap in here than you have in there. And to adjust that, is all that is on the high screw, which is this one. So obviously if you wind that anti-clockwise and then you move the derailleur over, you'd have it so as it's now hitting the inner plate against the chainring like that. It's touching at the back there. So all we do is wind that in clockwise a little bit. That'll take it back over that way. So wind that in a bit and try again. Just do a little bit more. That's about right there. So we just check that before we go and hook the cable up. So we check the inner and then the outer like that to make sure before we hook the cable up. So the next stage is we need to get the cable up through, put it on the pinch bolt. So with the cable, you just want it over the top there of the pinch bolt behind the washer there in position. Now before you go and hook this cable up, make sure you go up to your shifter on your handlebar and shift it, make sure it is shifted down to the inner chainring before you hook this cable up, because if you don't, you obviously won't be able to shift because it's set wrong in the first place. So make sure it's shifted down to the inner one before you hook this up. And then it's a 4mm Allen key for that. And all I'm going to do is just use a pair of pliers on the cable and just put some tension on it. So just pull on the cable while I'm snugging up while we're tightening down on the pinch bolt like that. So that's got it initially held there. And then what we do is, now we know it's pinched up there, we can just check that it shifts across. So you go up to your shifter and then shift over like that, and then back down like that to make sure you got full movement. There you go. So you know it's working like that, as you can see. So now I know it's working. I'll just check that pinch bolt. Just hold on to the derailleur while you do it and just snug that down tight. And then what we'll do is get the chain on there and try it with the chain on. So we've got the chain on now. We're on the inner at the front and the largest at the rear, 30 tooth in this case. And now you just want to double check, now the cable's hooked up, that you've still got a little gap here, and it only will be a small gap there, that the chain's not actually bent out of shape here, so the plate isn't pushing into it at all, it's just sat there, just there, and it's not forcing it over, so it's not rubbing on it effectively. Now, to alter that, if you go to the low screw and try and alter it, if you turn the low screw, because it was set before the cable was put on, it will only move, if you turn that screw, the cage will only move over this way towards the outer chainring. It won't move any further back towards the tyre with the cable in place, so you could turn that screw and it won't move any more that way. To move it out of the way anymore, effectively what you have to do is disconnect the cable, move it over a little bit, and then hook your cable back up again. And the best thing to do is always pull on the, trying to pull with the cable with your hand. You don't really get enough tension on the cable trying to just hold onto it and pull it, even with a full length cable. You're better off, like I said, it showed, using a pair of pliers on the end of the cable and pulling on it to get more to get enough tension on that cable is always the best way to do it. Now, so we know we've got a gap there, so that's all good. So what we've got to do is shift down on the cassette at the back to the 11 on the rear, and then we can shift up to the outer chainring and then check the gap on the outer chainring up in here when this is shifted over. So we just do that now. So shifted up on the outer, as you see, you'd easily shift it across, no problem. So what we're looking at now is the gap up in here, to make sure there's a gap here. So when you're on the smallest at the rear, there's enough gap here. It won't be a lot, it'll only be like 0.5 of a millimetre gap, so hardly anything there. But you don't want it touching when you're pedaling, so just look up there, up in here at the front there, look in and see, make sure. Now again, the high screw, wherever it was set when before the cable was attached, is where it'd be set to now, so you'll only be able to alter it one way. So you won't be able to alter it if it was just touching there and you wanted to move the plate further out this way. You won't be able to, not with the cable attached. It'll only go back the other way, so it'll go back towards the wheel. It won't come this way with the cable attached. So wherever you set that limit, first of all, is where it'll be. So when I checked it earlier, when I pulled across on the cage without that hooked up, the cable, I pulled across on it just to check it earlier. I say you want it further over this way, out this way, because then you can adjust it back the other way if you have to. You can't do it the other way around. Now, if there isn't a gap there and it's touching there just slightly, and you want to increase that gap here, then if you've got a barrel adjuster up by your handlebars in the cable, so if you've got a barrel adjuster up there, what you can do is go up there and wind that barrel adjuster so as it tensions up the cable and allows a gap here. So as it's tensioning up the cable, effectively it's pulling down on here, and it's moving the derailleur over this way with a little bit of cable tension. You won't need a lot, just a handful of turns on the barrel adjuster so that's effectively anti-clockwise on the barrel adjuster. So before you hook your cable up, if you've got a barrel adjuster up there, make sure your barrel adjuster is wound right in clockwise just off the bottom. So wind it all the way in clockwise and then back it off a little bit, and then you've got the full range of adjustment on it then to get the tension here if you need to. So you can wind it anti-clockwise, you know you've got enough adjustment then to get this gap there. So once you're happy with that gap there, obviously you can always double check it before you cut your cable to length. Then you can stick your cable to length and put an end stop on. So if you had a full length cable ready, you snip it off a little bit left. Don't leave too much because you get in the way. And then put a crimper stop on the end of that. So just crimp a stop on the end of there. So I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more cycle related content. Till next one, ride safe and I'll see you then.